Remember when every Canadian pub smelled like vinegar, cigarette smoke, and salt? There was a time when walking into your neighborhood tavern meant stepping into a world of cloudy glass jars, endless bowls of peanuts, and chip bags hanging behind the bar like lottery tickets. These weren't just snacks. They were the backdrop to Friday nights after work, hockey games on fuzzy TVs, and your dad's stories that got longer with each beer. Today we're diving into 15 old pub snacks only true Canadians remember. You're about to take a trip back to when bars were simpler, smokier, and way less worried about allergen labels. Which of these classics do you miss most? Let's find out. The bottomless bowl of salted peanuts. Here's a snack that wrote the playbook for bar economics. Free salted peanuts in a shared bowl, refilled all night long, sitting right there on the counter. Grab a handful, shells on the floor. Nobody cared. Why did bars do this? Simple. Salt makes you thirsty. Thirsty people order more beer. It's the oldest trick in the book, and it worked beautifully from the 70s into the 90s. Peanuts were dirt cheap to buy in bulk. You could keep people munching all night for the cost of a couple bags from the wholesale club. If you grew up in that era, you remember the whole scene. Dim lighting, ashtrays on every table, those bowls of peanuts every few stools, shells crunching under your shoes as you walked to the bathroom, your buddy hogging the bowl during the third period, hands diving in over and over while everyone yelled at the TV. But two things killed the free peanut bowl. First, people started getting really nervous about germs. Studies came out about how many hands had been in those communal bowls and how rarely they got washed. It wasn't exactly appetizing once you thought about it. Second, peanut allergies became a massive public health concern in the 90s and 2000s. Bars didn't want the liability. Parents didn't want their kids anywhere near the stuff. So quietly, almost apologetically, the bowls disappeared. Some bars switched to packaged peanuts sold individually. Most just stopped offering them altogether and watched their beer sales stay exactly the same. Turns out, people will keep drinking even without the free salt delivery system. Beer nuts and sweet salty glazed peanuts. If free peanuts were too risky or too cheap looking, bars upgraded to the branded stuff, beer nuts. Those little foil bags of sweet and salty glazed peanuts that had been a bar staple in the States since the 60s and happily crossed the border into Canadian taverns. You bought them like you bought cigarettes. Pointed at the rack behind the bar, bartender grabbed a bag. You ripped it open and suddenly your fingers were sticky with that weird candy coating that was somehow both sugary and salty at the exact same time. These were perfect for pool halls and bowling alley lounges. A pint and a pack of beer nuts. Maybe a game of cribbage, the whole night sorted for under $10. They weren't free, but they were close enough, and they had that same magic trick built in. Sweetness made you want something to wash it down. Saltiness made you thirsty. Before you knew it, you were 3 beers deep and reaching for another bag. But the same problems that killed the free peanuts eventually caught up to beer nuts. Allergy fears, hygiene concerns about the bulk bins some places used, and most importantly, the profit math changed. Bars figured out they could make way more money selling a plate of nachos or a basket of wings than they ever could on a $1 bag of nuts. So beer nuts got pushed out of the tavern and back onto the grocery store shelf where they still live today, waiting for road trips and baseball games. Hawkins Cheezies in plastic bar bowls. Now we're talking about a true Canadian icon, Hawkins Cheezies. Those knobbly, crunchy, aggressively orange corn snacks covered in real cheddar powder. Made in Ontario since the late 40s, a staple in every corner store, every school cafeteria, and every Legion Hall and small-town pub from coast to coast. The thing about Cheezies is they weren't just snacks. They were an experience. You couldn't eat them without getting that nuclear orange dust all over your fingers. And once it was there, it wasn't coming off. Not without a good scrub. So you'd see guys at the bar, pints in one hand, cheesy fingers being wiped on jeans with the other, leaving streaks like war paint. Bartenders would dump bags of cheesies into those cheap plastic bowls and set them out during curling bonspiels or hockey playoffs. The smell alone could sell another round, that sharp fake cheese corn crunch aroma mixing with cigarette smoke and spilled draft. It was the smell of community sports and small-town Saturday nights. Telling and preparing this video took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the video. But cheesies were messy as hell. Cheese dust got everywhere: tables, bar stools, upholstery. As Canadian bars started upgrading their interiors in the 90s and 2000s, moving away from smoke-stained wood paneling toward cleaner, more modern looks, those messy free snacks became a problem. Smoking bans meant you could actually see the orange fingerprints on everything. So the bowls vanished. You can still buy cheesies at any grocery store in Canada, but you won't find them dumped out on pub counters anymore. Too much cleanup, not enough class. The cloudy jar of pickled eggs. That big glass jar sitting on the back bar, filled with what looked like a science experiment gone wrong. Cloudy vinegar, floating peppercorns, hard-boiled eggs that had been marinating for who knows how long, turning yellower by the day. Pickled eggs were a British pub tradition that Canadian taverns copied wholesale, especially in small towns where the hotel bar didn't have a real kitchen. The economics were beautiful. Eggs were cheap. Vinegar was cheap. You could leave the jar out all day and all night without worrying about refrigeration, at least back then. The ritual was half the fun. Some regular would drop a loonie on the bar. The bartender would pop that lid with a little hiss of vinegar-scented air. Out came the tongs. One egg, speared and plopped onto a little paper tray. A shake of salt. A crack of pepper. Done. For a certain generation of Canadians, that pickled egg was pure protein between beers, a dare for newcomers, and proof you were a true regular. But growing food safety rules killed them. Health inspectors started asking hard questions about temperature logs and refrigeration. Younger drinkers took one look and thought, gross, when they could order nachos or wings instead. By the late 90s, most of those jars had quietly disappeared, and honestly, nobody under 40 misses them. But if you're over 50 and you spent time in a small-town legion, you absolutely remember that smell. Hostess foil bag, chips beside your pint. For decades, Hostess potato chips were the Canadian chip, not Lay's, not Ruffles, Hostess. Those shiny foil bags hung behind bars across the country like currency. You didn't even need to ask, just pointed. The bartender grabbed one with the same hand, pouring your beer. Hostess dominated the Canadian market from the 60s into the 80s. They were everywhere: ball games, basement parties, and yes, every single tavern and pub that didn't have a proper kitchen. The bags were small, cheap, and easy. Salt and vinegar. Barbecue, plain, simple flavors for simple times. There was something about the ritual, that metallic crinkle as you tore open the foil, the smell of grease and salt hitting the smoky bar air, thin, delicate chips that shattered when you bit them. You'd shake the crumbs into your mouth when the bag was empty, then crumple it up and toss it toward the ashtray, usually missing. But Hostess couldn't survive the chip wars. In 1996, they got bought out and rebranded as Lay's. The name disappeared almost overnight. Suddenly, those familiar bags were gone, replaced by the big American branding. At the same time, Canadian pubs were evolving. They were adding kitchens, building menus, moving from beer and a bag of chips to loaded fries, wings, and proper appetizers. The Hostess bag beside your pint became a memory. Older Canadians still talk about them with the kind of fondness usually reserved for dead relatives, and, honestly, fair enough. Those chips were part of the furniture. Losing them felt like losing a little piece of the country. Old Dutch twin pack and ketchup chips in prairie pubs out west, especially across the prairies, one brand ruled the bar snacks: Old Dutch. The company opened a plant in Winnipeg in 1954 and spread like wildfire through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Their signature move? Boxed twin packs, 2 bags in one box. perfect for sharing or not. Old Dutch also gave Canadians one of their most beloved chip flavors, ketchup. That sweet, tangy, tomato powder-covered chip that Americans think is weird and Canadians consider a birthright. Walk into a small-town Manitoba hotel bar in the 80s and you'd see stacks of Old Dutch boxes behind the counter. Ketchup, all dressed, dill pickle, flavors that screamed Canada. The twin pack was genius for bars. You could sell them by the box or by the bag. Regulars would buy a box, rip it open, toss one bag to a buddy across the table, and settle in for a long night of beer and gossip. The boxes also looked good stacked up, gave the bar a stocked, ready-for-business vibe, even if the menu was just chips and pickled eggs. But like Hostess, Old Dutch got squeezed out of the pub game by changing times. Vending machines took over the late-night snack market. Convenience stores became the go-to for chip runs. And bars that wanted to look more upscale stopped stocking chip boxes altogether. They focused on draft systems and full food menus instead. You can still buy Old Dutch across Western Canada, and ketchup chips are still everywhere. But that image of the twin pack box on a prairie pub counter, that's history now. Pure, salty, ketchup-flavored history. Humpty Dumpty Party Mix in maritime taverns. Down east, the chip game belonged to Humpty Dumpty, a beloved snack brand that built a loyal following across Atlantic Canada and parts of Ontario long before Old Dutch bought them out in the 2000s. If you grew up in the Maritimes, you knew Humpty Dumpty Party Mix. Rings, sticks, regular chips, all tossed together in one glorious bag of random shapes and textures. Humpty Dumpty wasn't fancy. They were scrappy, local, and proud of it. Bacon and hickory sticks, ring-shaped chips that looked like tiny donuts, flavors that tasted like they were invented in someone's basement and somehow worked. Maritime pubs loved them because they were cheap, they were regional, and they paired perfectly with a schooner of beer and a night of live fiddle music or classic rock. The party mix was especially popular because it felt like a whole meal in a bag. Crunch, salt, variety. You could mindlessly munch through an entire bag during a darts tournament without even noticing. Bartenders would pour them into plastic baskets and set them out during kitchen hours when nothing else was available. But Humpty Dumpty's brand identity got swallowed up in corporate consolidation. Distribution shifted toward big grocery chains, and maritime bars, which had always punched above their weight with fresh seafood and full meal menus, started leaning harder into that strength. Why sell a bag of party mix when you could sell fish and chips or a lobster roll? The party mix still exists in some form under the Old Dutch umbrella, but it's not the same. And you definitely won't find it in baskets on maritime pub tables anymore. That era's done. Hickory sticks. Hickory sticks. Those impossibly thin, smoky-flavored potato sticks that came in a bag and looked like someone had put regular chips through a shredder. A Hostess product that's still around today, but back in the 70s and 80s, they were a bar favorite. The flavor was the whole point. Hickory smoke. Fake, sure, but aggressive and delicious, in a way that matched the cigarette haze hanging over every pub in the country. You'd pour a handful into an ashtray-style bowl, and they'd just sit there, tiny and crispy, waiting to be devoured one stick at a time. Kids loved them, which is why you'd sometimes see them on the family side of a hotel restaurant, where parents were technically allowed to bring children before the lounge-only rule kicked in at a certain hour. A kid would swipe a few sticks while mom and dad ordered another round, and nobody cared because they cost about 15 cents. But when smoking bans swept through Canadian provinces in the late 90s and 2000s, the whole vibe of smoky bars changed. Suddenly, you could breathe. Suddenly, you could smell the beer and the cleaning products. And yeah, suddenly, hickory sticks tasted a little weird without the cloud of Export A hanging in the air. Plus, the same math that killed other cheap snacks applied here. Bars made pennies on hickory sticks. They made dollars on loaded nachos and potato skins. So the sticks quietly disappeared from the bowls, migrated back to the grocery aisle, and became a kid's lunchbox thing instead of a pub thing. Corn nuts. Let's talk about danger. Corn nuts. Those rock-hard roasted corn kernels that have been around since 1939 and somehow convinced millions of people that risking dental work was worth it for a salty crunch. Canadian pubs, especially out west, loved them as an alternative to peanuts. Corn nuts came in little bags or sometimes in bulk bins. You'd grab a handful and immediately regret it because biting down felt like chewing gravel. But in the best way, the crunch was satisfying, the salt hit hard, and there was a whole macho culture around them. Careful or you'll chip a tooth, someone would say, laughing, and then grab another handful because what's life without a little risk? They were especially popular in rougher bars, places where construction workers stopped after a shift, oil patch pubs in Alberta, pool halls where people bet on games and didn't care if their snacks came with a choking hazard warning. But as the Canadian population aged and people got more aware of their dental health, corn nuts started feeling like a bad idea. Nobody wants to explain to their dentist that they cracked a molar on bar snacks. And again, bars realized they were making almost nothing on selling tiny bags of hard corn when they could upsell someone to mozzarella sticks or wings. So corn nuts retreated. You can still find them in convenience stores and gas stations where they belong. But in pubs, gone, too hard, too risky, too 90s, pepperoni sticks. If you needed protein and the pub didn't have a kitchen, there was always the pepperoni stick, slim, oily, wrapped in plastic, sitting in a glass jar on the counter like contraband. Usually from some regional Canadian producer nobody had ever heard of, but everyone trusted because the bartender said so. These things were everywhere. Legion halls, curling clubs, small-town hotel bars where refrigeration space was tight and a full menu wasn't happening. You'd buy one for $1 or $2, rip off the wrapper, and bite into pure salt, fat, and preservatives. It tasted like camping and bad decisions, and somehow that was exactly what you wanted. Pepperoni sticks served a purpose. They were cheap, they kept forever, and they gave people something solid to chew on after 5 beers when the kitchen had closed an hour ago. You'd see guys snap them in half, share them, wipe the grease on napkins that immediately became transparent. But stricter food handling and temperature rules made room temperature meat displays a nightmare for bar owners. Health inspectors started asking questions, paperwork piled up, liability became a concern. So most bars just gave up and moved their meat snacks to the cooler or stopped selling them entirely. Now if you want a pepperoni stick, you buy it from a gas station or a grocery store in a sealed package with a barcode and a nutrition label. The jar behind the bar? That's history. And honestly, probably for the best. Pickled sausage and onion jars. If pickled eggs weren't scary enough, some bars doubled down with pickled sausages. Bright red or muddy brown mystery meat floating in brine with onion slices and whole peppercorns. Another jar, another dare. Another relic of a time when food safety was more of a suggestion than a rule. Pickled sausages were a dive bar staple across North America, and Canadian taverns happily imported the tradition. They sat on the back bar next to the egg jar, sometimes for months, slowly turning pinker in the vinegar. Brave souls would order one. The bartender would fish it out with tongs, plop, paper tray, maybe some crackers if you were lucky. Why did people eat them? Honestly, mostly to prove they could. They were salty, vinegary, and had a texture somewhere between a hot dog and regret. But in a bar with no kitchen and nothing else to eat, they did the job, soaked up the beer, gave you something to do with your hands. But like the pickled eggs, these jars couldn't survive modern food safety expectations. Health departments cracked down, customers got squeamish, and the rise of fast casual chains made homemade jars of floating meat look unprofessional and kind of gross. By the 2000s, pickled sausage jars had vanished from Canadian pub culture. You might still find them in very old-school American dive bars or specialty stores. But in Canada, done. Nobody misses them except the people who survive them. Free pretzel sticks and twists. Pretzels. Simple, dry, salty, cheap. A European beer hall tradition that Canadian pubs picked up and ran with. Free pretzel sticks or twists in a shared bowl, refilled all night for the price of a couple bulk bags. Pretzels were the perfect bar snack. They didn't go bad quickly. They didn't make a mess. They were just salty enough to keep people ordering drinks without being overwhelming. You could munch them absent-mindedly through an entire darts game or a cribbage tournament and barely notice. The ritual was social. Someone would slide the bowl down the bar, you'd grab a handful, pass it to the next person, broken pretzels and salt grains piling up on beer-stained coasters. Nobody thought twice about it, just part of the texture of a Friday night. But the same hygiene concerns that killed the peanut bowl eventually caught the pretzels too. Once people started worrying about who had washed their hands before diving into the communal snacks, the magic was gone. Nobody wanted to think about it too hard. Higher-end pubs also moved away from free snacks entirely. They wanted to sell food, not give it away. So the pretzel bowl disappeared, replaced by portioned, plated, priced appetizers that actually made money. You can still get pretzels in Canadian bars, but you'll pay for them now, and they'll come in a basket with mustard or cheese sauce, looking very intentional and very much not free. Free popcorn machines by the bar. The popcorn machine. That little red-topped beauty sitting in the corner of the bar, tumbling out free popcorn. All night long, the smell of fake butter and salt mixing with cigarette smoke. The sound of kernels popping under the hum of conversation and hockey commentary. Free popcorn was the ultimate bar strategy. It cost almost nothing to make. It was endlessly salty, and people loved it. Scoop a bowl, munch through it, order another beer, repeat. For bars in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, especially across Canada and the northern US, popcorn machines were a no-brainer investment. For a lot of Canadians, the smell of bar popcorn is instant nostalgia. Friday night. Your dad taking you to the Legion, the popcorn machine in the corner, kernels stuck to your lip, butter on your fingers, hockey on the TV, everything simple and good. But popcorn machines were a pain to maintain. Cleaning them was tedious. They took up space. And as bars moved towards sleeker, more modern designs, big industrial popcorn machines started looking clunky and outdated. Health inspectors also got pickier about self-serve stations. Who was using the scoop? How often was it cleaned? How long had that batch been sitting out? Easier to just unplug the machine and move on. Now free popcorn is mostly a movie theater thing. In bars, if you see popcorn at all, it's usually some gourmet version with truffle oil and parmesan, sold for $8. Not quite the same. DIY Canadian pub mix, house bar mix. Every bar had its own version. Pub mix, bar mix, snack mix. Whatever you called it, it was the same idea. Grab a bunch of cheap bulk ingredients, dump them in a tub, shake some seasoning over the top, and scoop it into bowls all night long. Inspired by commercial bar mix products that have been around since the 60s, a lot of Canadian bar owners in the 70s and 80s just made their own. Peanuts, pretzels, cereal squares, maybe some cheesies or Old Dutch crumbs if they had leftovers. A little snapshot of whatever was cheap at the grocery store that week. Every pub's mix was slightly different. Some added sesame sticks. Some threw in dried peas. Some went heavy on the garlic powder. It was DIY chaos, and people loved it because it felt personal. This wasn't some corporate snack from a factory. This was Bob the bartender's recipe, and it was different every time. But unlabeled mystery mix became a problem as food safety and allergen labeling expectations tightened. Customers started asking what was in it. Bar owners couldn't answer. Inspectors started asking for ingredient lists. Nobody had one. Big snack brands also started selling pre-made mixes with proper labels and nutrition info, making the DIY version look risky and unnecessary. So quietly, the house pub mix vanished, replaced by bags of bits and bites or whatever else came from the distributor. You can still make your own snack mix at home, but in a Canadian bar, that era's over. The whole scene. Here's the truth. The number one thing we miss isn't one specific snack. It's the whole culture, the entire vibe of walking into a Canadian pub and seeing snacks everywhere, bowls on the bar, jars on the back shelf, chip boxes in the corner, free stuff, cheap stuff, stuff that made the place feel like a living room with a liquor license. These snacks weren't just food, they were part of how we socialized. They shaped how long people stayed, how much they drank, what they remembered, the texture of a cheesy, the smell of pickled vinegar, the crunch of Old Dutch, the risk of a corn nut. All of it added up to something bigger than calories. Salty snacks turned pubs into community spaces. Parents could bring kids to the family side and let them munch chips while the adults talked. Shift workers could grab a pepperoni stick and a beer without needing a full meal. Regulars could nurse a pint for 2 hours because, hey, there were still pretzels in the bowl. But in the late 20th and early 21st century, everything changed. Food regulations tightened, allergy awareness exploded, smoking bans cleared the air and changed the atmosphere. And the shift toward restaurant-style menus transformed Canadian bars from beer with free snacks into full-meal gastropubs. Today's pubs serve truffle fries and sliders instead of hickory sticks and pub mix. The food is better, the profits are higher, the experience is cleaner and safer, and way more Instagrammable. But something got lost. That casual, slightly chaotic, everyone welcome vibe. The sense that you could walk in with $2, grab some peanuts, and stay all night. The feeling that the bar wasn't trying to sell you anything except a good time. Those 15 snacks we just counted down, they were the currency of that world. And now they're gone, replaced by menus and allergen warnings and QR codes. Progress, probably, but also the end of an era. If this trip down memory lane brought back some good times, smash that like button and subscribe for more forgotten Canadian stories. And seriously, tell us in the comments which pub snack you miss most. We read every single one.